please excuse me while I cradle my iPad like a baby and try talking to the microphone. Yeah, so I'm Loryn. Can you hear me all right? How's my distance? Oh, cool. All right, so I am an illustrator and designer. So I'm also from Hamilton. I'm one of the very lucky people that knew exactly what she wanted to do really early on in my life. So since high school, I knew I wanted to be an illustrator. So I was on a one-track path. So after studying art, like a lot of art students, I thought, what the heck am I going to get a job in? The industry in New Zealand is just so small, and a job as a full-time illustrator just doesn't really exist. So I knew that I had to form something for myself. So I had to be self-employed, I had to come up with my own business, etc. So I knew that this was going to come along with a bunch of challenges that I was expecting. So like keeping up with new software, managing workflow, all of that sort of stuff that comes along with running a business, being self-employed. But there were a lot of things that I came across along the way that I really wasn't expecting. So when planning this talk today, I wanted to share with you a couple of things that I wasn't expecting to come across as challenges. So maybe for some of you, if you're thinking of going out freelance or you're still studying, you can take this as like a heads up or a warning as to what you're going to encounter while you're freelancing. Cool. So firstly, it's what I like to call self-aware self-employment. So knowing yourself is great in many situations in life, like the small things, like if you have a coffee after 4 p.m, you won't sleep until 1 a.m. To maybe some of the larger things, like if you're feeling really low on energy, going for a walk around the lake with a friend and looking at dogs can fill you with energy and take you throughout the week, right? This self-knowledge should be applied to when you're being self-employed. And it sounds pretty obvious, right? Knowing what makes you want to throw your computer out the window and what makes you really, really inspired. But if you think about it this way, you are your own boss. So if your boss is in a good mood and they're really good to work with that day, that's awesome, right? But if your boss is really lazy, I'm not talking about myself, but if they don't like chasing up late payments, if they're too scared to email clients and confront them, that means you don't get paid, right? Or maybe they'd feel like procrastinating and going on really, really long coffee breaks because they want to avoid their work. And then your work piles up and then you get really stressed and frazzled. That's all on you. You are both your boss and your employer. So you need to be really self-aware as to which space you're operating in throughout your day. When you're working by yourself, there's nobody else to do those tasks for you that you find really, really hard. So there's definitely an element of really having to force yourself and get through those dumb tasks that you really, really struggle with. And so you can spend more time on those other tasks that you really love and the reason why you started being self-employed and working for yourself in the first place, right? Secondly, kill your insecurities with goal setting. I think we all want to be successful in whatever we do, right? Success looks like something different for every single one of us. So for some of you, it may be simply earning enough money so you can travel. For some of you, maybe you want to work for a really big brand that you really admire or be featured on a blog that you really, really like. We all have something. And maybe once we achieve those goals, we'll feel successful, and how great is that day going to be, right? But for a lot of us, we're still on the road to achieving all those goals, and they can feel really, really distant and far away. And insecurity and dissatisfaction with your work crops up, and it crops up so much more often than what we like to. People don't really talk about it a whole lot on social media, so sometimes you feel really isolated, like you're the only person in that boat. What I have found has been really, really helpful is setting goals, so actually taking what you think is success and defining what it means really, really specifically, and then finding a mentor to come alongside you to help you put some steps into place as to getting closer to those goals, right? Mentors have a lot more hindsight than you. They know what's achievable, what's not achievable. They can keep you in line, they can keep you accountable, and they can give you really, really great advice. So when insecurity does bubble up, and it will, you can point to those smaller goals that are leading towards those larger goals, and you can squash that insecurity. And for now, that might be all that success is for you, those tiny little steps towards those larger goals. And lastly, I wanted to talk about structuring in unstructured creative time into your day. So for me, illustration sits in a really awkward space between commercial and artistic. It's commercial because it's about creating products and visuals for brands that need to sell something. And it's also art, so it's about creating something that looks nice, something that people maybe would want to put on their wall and look at it later on. So it sits in this awkward camp between the two. But they're both equally important. You can't have illustration without one or the other, right? So we all know the saying about our best ideas coming to us when we're in the shower. And I think most people are like me, and my best creative ideas happen in an environment that's really pressure-free, where we can be free to let loose, experiment, and make mistakes, and hopefully run into a couple of happy accidents on the way, right? But again, when you're freelancing, you've got a lot of emails to reply to, invoices to send, quotes to calculate, leads to follow up on, and all of these require a big degree of structure and predictability. So in amongst all of that, where is there time to be creative and loose? So just over a year ago, I found myself talking to an illustrator friend of mine, and when we catch up, we would show each other our sketchbooks, and I was really struggling with a lot of my projects at the time, and as we were flicking through our sketchbooks, I noticed like my sketchbooks had turned into to-do lists and quote calculations and all these really boring things, shopping lists, etc. And somewhere along the line, I had started valuing calculating quotes and sending emails a lot more than I had valued time to experiment and just figure out what it is that I liked doing and like involving myself in doing what I liked to do. So I set myself a task, 30 minutes at the beginning of every day to be specific, was for me just to experiment. That time that I thought would be wasted had actually proved to be really, really valuable. So all of that time experimenting actually informed the rest of my day. So it made sending bad emails a lot easier. It made writing quotes easier. So it was a huge mental shift to take valuing invoicing and all that admin stuff just as much as the creative side, because you need to make money, right? Like you need to be able to live. So schedule it in what you need to do. So if you're a writer, maybe you need to sit down and write a paragraph every day. If you're a painter, maybe you just need to throw around some paint. And probably a lot of what you'll produce in that time is garbage, but there will be some stuff in there that is really, really inspiring, and it will remind you as to why you're doing what you're doing. So, in a nutshell, my 3 points: self-aware self-employment. Just be a good boss to yourself. Kill your insecurities by setting goals, getting a mentor alongside you and working towards them every day, and structure in that really unstructured, messy, creative time into your very structured day. Thanks.